you feeling at the moment, man?
Good, man. Really good. Heading into shit. I guess we got less than, it's about 20 days till the record drops. It's been a long, long time coming. I think, like I said, probably like 8 years. I know Johnny said that we really buckled down around 2018 to start getting this stuff going. But I remember, getting emails and having conversations about maybe going into the studio even in 2017. And I've got versions of the song that go back to 2015. So this is like the longest that a project has taken to complete, and like it's finally coming out. And there were so many points when I didn't think this record was ever going to come out.
It's definitely finally happening. It's definitely taken a while.
A little bit.
What have been the biggest challenges along the way, like over the last 10 years?
Well, I mean, I think definitely probably would have seen this come out like a couple, maybe at least 2 or 3 years ago, had the lockdowns not happened. So that obviously sucked. But I mean, it's also like not really would have been that much big of a difference though, because Tony lives in Ireland. Our main songwriter guitarist Tony is a doctor over there. He moved over there to go to medical school, and then he recently just graduated. And so working with the schedule of him, and then Johnny, who's a full-time professional, coder, and with 2 kids, and he's married. And then Al, works in the court system in New Hampshire. So everybody having like full, real adult lives. Besides me, I'm still, trying to live the 20-year-old fantasy of being a musician. But so I think that was probably like the most difficult part about it is like, we can't get together and write in a room, and just hash stuff out and be like, all right, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You could do that. We could have gotten this done in, 6 months probably. But with just everybody being as far out as they are, it's like, it just takes a really long time. But it also allowed us to like kind of not have the pressure of having a deadline. So we were able to like make essentially as many revisions as we wanted to make, which a lot of artists don't get to do. Usually you're on that 2-year schedule, like every 2 years you got to drop a record. And so you get 3 months for the writing process, and wherever it's at is wherever it's at. And that's kind of where things generally stand. And for us, it was like, well, maybe put it off till next year.
So you mentioned revisions, and you mentioned also that some of these songs have been around since 2015, 2016. Have those songs in particular changed a lot, or are they kind of still close to what they were?
Yeah, I'll go back and I can see like, where things started, and I can still recognize some of it, but there's a lot. I mean, stuff is way different for sure. I mean, some tempos might be changed 15 beats per minute or something. Just pretty massive change in the tempo. And then just like the way that riffs connected with each other. We just really wanted to make sure, like, it's very chaotic. The record has a real strong sense of almost like kind of, schizophrenia almost, if you will. Like, it's kind of like the character, the vibe that we were going for is this character's going on this existential reckoning, this odyssey of trying to find, I guess, like their meaning in life, or the meaning of life, period. Find the theory of everything. And so it's very roller coaster-esque in that there's lots of twists and turns. And so when you do that, you can really like throw people off the roller coaster if it's not well thought out. So a lot of the work was in making sure that it flowed, even though it was so crazy, that it's still like, because it could be very choppy in parts, like at the beginning, and you're like, God, this riff kind of doesn't go into this riff. What can we do to it to make it, to smooth over the process of transitioning through it? So, yeah, I haven't in a really time. I think that's a really cool idea, actually. I would love to go and like listen to the very first version of each one of these songs and then compare it, back to back, listen to the final record and then go back and listen to the first versions and be like, holy shit, we did 8 years worth of revisions.
So speaking on that, what points in the process do you think about how these songs are going to sit next to each other on the album, like the order?
Sure. I kind of came up with the order. I might not have anything changed out, but it was weird. I mean, we knew that we were like, okay, once you get to the mastering process, that's where you have to know, what order is going through. We did kind of know what song. We knew Forever Rot was going to be the closer, like from the beginning. And then we didn't know what was going to start the record out. Actually, we had another piece that was supposed to start the record out that didn't make it on. And I'm bummed out because it's actually my favorite thing that we wrote during this whole period, but it's all good. We have it for the next record.
Right.
So it was like, yeah, I remember just Johnny and I had been listening to the songs more than I've ever listened to any record in process that ever, because we kept making revisions into the mix process was super in depth and crazy. And they're like, okay, I just can't hear this on this part and this on this part. Okay, well, maybe we just need to bring the snare or bring the crack up in the snare a little bit and bring the 250 hertz in the guitar down. So we'd make that change, and then we'd get the whole new record again with that change and be like, okay, now this should be the last mix. Listen very closely. And any changes you need to make, that's it, And then that happened like 20 nights. So I just spent like December and January of 23, like listening to this record probably 25, 30 times. So I really got a strong feel for the flow of it. And I remember I put that rough order together and sent it to Johnny, and he's like, wow, this actually, it kind of makes a lot of sense. I think we might have made one or two changes where you're like, oh, this part of this song and this part of this song are real similar. And so we swapped those. But for the most part, we just kind of came up with it. And, you kind of trying to tell a story that is kind of a lost art these days because, who even, I think like, reviewers are, and some percentage of fans are the only people that listen to a record all the way through anymore. The majority of people are going to be listening to random songs here or there. So it's like, does the order matter? You're like, it still does. It's a lost art, I think. But for those people that do experience it that way and be like, all right, I'm going to listen to Sun Eater all the way through to the end of Moon Healer because it was designed to be that way, So yeah. Hopefully we did an okay job with that.
Yeah, I think you did. And I have to say, the sound, you went over and over the sound, as you said, but the production is on point. It sounds big.
Thank you.
Yeah. You said about the last song being very deliberate from the offset, like you knew that was going to be the last song. Did you know when you were writing it that was going to be at the end?
Yeah. So that song was written by, there's a Bobby Thompson, who is the one of the original big guitar. The band's had a lot of lineup changes back in the day, but one of the original guitarists from like Genesis, Doom, those days. He is still a very good friend. He's still in Arizona and still a very close friend of the band. And so he still plays guitar a lot and writes stuff. So he's sort of written something for every album since. So, for example, on Demonocracy, he wrote Tarnished Gluttony, which was the closer, the end, big, moody kind of a closer. And then on Sun Eater, I believe it was Johnny's track. Actually, it might have been Al's. But anyway, so the Forever Out was Johnny's, or not Johnny, Bobby's song. Well modified, and it went through our whole massive filter process, but it was the impetus was his. And we just knew off the bat, we're like, oh, that's, when we first heard his, that intro riff and everything, we're like, oh, that's the closer, Just had that like finality, the essence of finality to it,
Yeah. So we've got Moon Healer, Sun Eater. What do you see as the connections?
So they were designed to sort of be like the yin and yang to each other, We knew that this was going to be a sequel from the get. We knew that we loved how Sun Eater came out, and the response that we got to it was really, really good. And so when we started getting songs from Tony again and being like, oh yes, we got to do another record, we knew we were like, it's going to be a sequel. So a buddy of mine, my buddy Bobby, not Bobby Thompson, but Frank Johnson, I was out in California touring with, I think, Havoc or somebody. I can't remember who I was out with. And we were walking along the beach, and he was like, we looked up, and it was I don't know if it was a full moon, but the moon was quite bright. And he was like, dude, you got to call the next record Moon Eater. And I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Sun Eater, Moon Eater, right? And so I suggested it to Johnny, and he liked the moon part of it, obviously, just by natural having the yin, the yang, the opposites, the duality. But he didn't like either part. He's like, the second part should be different. So he scoured forever and finally came up with Healer, and that like a lot of people that would go into these sort of visionary states with hallucinogens, there's a very common archetype of like a healer, warrior, basically somebody that's sort of benevolently helping you through, overseeing your experience. And so that was kind of the essence of this one. It was like this character sort of in the first record was, kind of burned by his experience with things. And then in this thing, he's believed that he's found like essentially like divinity, that he's had access to God, I suppose,
Would you call this a more hopeful, optimistic album?
Yeah, but it's also tinged with, is he, like we've kept it very vague, and I love that Johnny did that. I think that sometimes when artists are very transparent with the lyrics and that it's very blatant, that you can tell what the song is about, I went to this place on a Tuesday and this happened and blah, 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 I think that it can sort of dilute the connection that the listener makes with the music. I don't know if you've had this experience, but it's definitely happened to me in the past where I'll know a song for 25 years, love a song for 25 years. But I never actually looked at the lyrics. And then I finally, especially now with like Spotify or I use Apple Music where you can click the lyric button and it'll, show the lyrics. And then I did that and I'm like, that's what he says. And I'm like, it fucking diminishes the song to me. My connection to it was much greater when I thought it was what I thought the song was about. So we purposely, Johnny, I think feels pretty similar to that. We purposefully keep it sort of vague and not obtuse, but opaque, to where you don't know if the character did, experience this enlightenment, and if he, escapes the cycle of rebirth and death and achieves enlightenment, or if he's just dead and it's that sort of 30 seconds that your brain is still alive after you die, or if all of it was just a trip and he's, just lost his mind and he's just schizophrenic. So it is sort of has like elements of hopefulness, or sort of like, I guess, optimism or positivity. But it could, also like in that weird trippy sense that you're like, but is that really the case?
Where did you personally first hear Job for a Cowboy? Do you remember?
I do. So I had joined a band called Cephalic Carnage. It's my first like touring band that I joined after my my band Ain Matter that I started with my good buddy Greg Williams and Brendan Burke, my like high school and grade school buddies. Cephalic was very prominent in the Colorado scene. Really one of the only metal bands to make it out of the local scene in Denver. Besides like Jag Panzer down in the Springs. But anyways, those big tours first started, Sounds of the Underground, Summer Slaughter, like the where the European festival thing sort of started making its way to the States, Ozfest and that kind of stuff. And so I remember hearing about this band because MySpace had sort of just, been accepted into the mainstream, where like if you told people in 2002 that you had this cool online site where you had friends, like that was not cool, and then MySpace came out, and I think by them making, focusing on having bands be on there, it made people be like, oh, well, check this band out on MySpace. So then you got to make a profile. And then it's sort of like was the process of pulling everybody into accepting social media. Right. But so you could go on that website as a band and upload 4 tracks and instantly have the capability of reaching, millions of people. Whereas in the old ways, when I was first coming up, you had to make demos, tapes or CDs and go try to hawk them, or play local shows and work your way up. So Job for a Cowboy really, I think, was the first band to go viral as a result, of just the access to millions of people. I talked to Johnny about this. He still has no idea really how that virility happened. Whether somebody I don't know if somebody hacked in and gave them all that. I don't think so, but somehow it just caught, right? And so anyways, from the external perspective, here we are, musicians in there, we're in our early 20s to, maybe late 20s, like with Cephalic. And there's bands that have been going for 10, 15 years that have 5 to 10 records out. And here's these 16-year-old kids that come out and get like all this accolade and are working their way up and getting slots on concerts and festivals, much higher than bands that had been putting in 10 years of work. So I remember there was a very like, it was jealousy, honestly, seeing them, but it was like scene poser, have your hair like this, wear your sister's jeans. It was very like not accepted. And so, but I remember listening to that EP and be like, well, I'm going to listen to it. And I was like, this is pretty cool, actually. Like for a 16-year-old kid to write that, like that was way, way cooler than shit I was writing at 16. I would not let anybody hear what I was writing at 16, So, so it's just kind of funny. Then slowly they immediately took a hard left turn and were like, we don't want anything to do with this whole deathcore, this haircut thing, because Johnny, did have legitimate death metal roots. And so with Genesis, you saw them completely drop any core element, breakdowns, the pig squeals, the breeze, all that stuff, and they went straight death metal. And then with Ruination, when Al came in, Al brought a lot of grind elements into it, a lot of real crazy technicality. So then by the time they asked me to join in 2011, it was like full on tech death, So it was like kind of, it was acceptable to like go play that from me coming from like a grindcore death grind ethos, that I wasn't joining like a MySpace deathcore band. At that point, they had evolved into a real death metal band, So that was kind of my experience with it, coming from the outside, and like being like at first like these fucking kids, then to all of a sudden like, oh, okay, I'm in the band now.
When you guys play live now, do you incorporate any of that really early stuff, or how far back do you go?
Yeah, that's kind of the thing too, right? Like, so you become one of the first bands to go viral on the internet. You get this massive fan base as a result of it. And then you hard steer away from what made you, so big in the extreme metal scene anyways. So we kind of, would try to avoid playing that stuff, because what happened is that ended up being like a giant curse. It's like, yeah, it allowed the band to blow up, become something that, was a household name in the extreme metal world. Kind of unforgettable name, Job for a Cowboy. Maybe it's a stupid name, but you definitely aren't going to forget it. And then all of a sudden, all those fans are kind of like, wait, what is the new record? Where's the breakdowns? Where's the bass drops? Where are the breeze? Where are the pig squeals? And you're kind of like, oh, we don't want anything to do with that. So then you're in this weird limbo spot where the rest of the world, no matter how technical and crazy and anti-deathcore you wrote your material, you're still labeled deathcore. To this day, people will still, they'll put us on Spotify playlists, like, modern, deathcore playlists, and we're like, we're not fucking deathcore. But so I guess at this point we just kind of laugh at it, and just be like, well, you go look at the numbers and we can pull it up and I can see no matter what, still like Entombment of a Machine, the song that really broke the band. It's still our number one played song. It still gets 5 times more plays than any of the other material. So at a certain point, it's like, you kind of got to give a dog a bone. It's like, even though that's not where we're at musically, it still was well written for the time, like I said, and they're still fun to play. And the fans that big fan base that's still there still want to hear it. So we're like always trying to argue about whether we should do 1, 2, or maybe 3 songs off that EP to appease those old school fans, because at this point for them it's nostalgia. They want to hear that song to remind them of 2006, when they were in high school. So that's kind of our battle, is like, can we make ourselves known for this new thing? And I think we have, but you don't want to completely alienate people that did help put you where you are. Thanks again for the talk, man. It was great. Pleasure to meet you.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll see you in Montreal at some point soon.
It sounds awesome, man. It's been a long time since I've been up there, and I could use me some good poutine. For the best dissolves, and the summer night falls.